beyond the boundaries of reality, where imagination weaves dreams into existence. Welcome to Storylight. The research station clung to the edge of the Kepler abyss like a fragile bubble of light against infinite darkness. Lyra Evenshade stood in the observation deck, her breath fogging the glass as she gazed at the swirling nebula beyond. A lifetime among the stars had done little to quell her fascination with their beauty. But tonight, her mind was elsewhere. Behind her, the low hum of machinery filled the room as holographic displays floated, listing endless data streams. The Kepler station team had unearthed something extraordinary. An artifact buried deep within a drifting asteroid. It wasn't just the artifact's age that astounded her. Its design predated all known galactic civilizations. It was the strange patterns etched into its surface, faintly glowing with a cyan luminescence, that defied all attempts at deciphering. Lyra, Dr. Tarsin's voice broke her concentration. The station's lead archaeologist was a stout man with a perpetually furrowed brow. He held a datapad, his expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "We've isolated a signal. It's something else entirely." Lyra turned, her heart quickening. "A signal? From the artifact?" Quote. Tarsin nodded. "We fed its patterns through the harmonic interpreter. What came back wasn't language. It was music." In the lab, the artifact hovered within a containment field, its alien contours faintly pulsating. The team gathered around as Tarsin activated the playback. A haunting melody filled the room, unlike anything Lyra had ever heard. It was complex yet eerily familiar, as if echoing a memory she couldn't quite place. The sound resonated, not just in her ears, but deep within her chest. "It's transmitting continuously," Tarsin explained. "But the structure of the melody is adaptive. It changes, as if responding to us." Lyra stepped closer, her mind racing. Her specialty in xenolinguistics had brought her to Kepler Station. But this was beyond any language she had studied. "It's not random," she murmured. "It's a pattern, a message, but not in words." "What kind of message?" another researcher asked nervously. Lyra shook her head. "That's what I intend to find out." That night, Lyra stayed in the lab, replaying the melody over and over. Each note seemed deliberate, weaving together a story she couldn't yet understand. Her analysis revealed something astonishing. The melody interacted with neural patterns. When she listened, her brain waves synchronized with the artifact's signal, creating fleeting visions, shards of light, distant stars, and a great chasm of shadow. As she worked, the station lights flickered. A cold dread crept into her thoughts, though she couldn't pinpoint why. The next morning, Tarsin barged into her quarters, his face pale. "Lyra, we have a problem. The artifact's signal isn't just broadcasting. It's been detected." "Detected? By who?" Quote. Before he could answer, the station alarms blared. An automated voice announced, "Unidentified vessel approaching. Security protocols engaged." Lyra's stomach sank. The Kepler abyss was remote, far from any populated systems. No one should have known they were here, unless someone had been watching. The vessel was a sleek, menacing frigate bearing no official insignia. But its purpose was clear. It belonged to mercenaries. The station shuddered as their docking clamps latched on. Lyra grabbed her research slate and turned to Tarsin. "We have to get the artifact out of here." "It's too late," Tarsin stammered. "They're already inside." Quote. A deafening explosion rocked the station as mercenaries stormed the corridors. Lyra barely had time to process the chaos before Tarsin shoved a small, metallic device into her hands. "The artifact's core data," he whispered urgently. "Protect it." No matter what happens, it cannot fall into the wrong hands. Before she could protest, he pushed her toward the maintenance shaft. Go. Quote. With the sound of gunfire growing closer, Lyra crawled through the narrow passage, clutching the device tightly. Her heart pounded as she navigated the maze-like vents, the station's vibrations amplifying her fear. Emerging near the docking bay, she spotted a small, battered starship, likely the mercenaries' stolen prize. Its pilot stood nearby, arguing with one of the intruders. Desperation overtook her caution. She bolted toward the ship, drawing the attention of the pilot, a scruffy man with a sly grin that vanished the moment he saw her. What the hell? Quote. Get me out of here, Lyra shouted. I'll pay you anything. Quote. The mercenaries raised their weapons, but the pilot reacted faster, grabbing her arm and dragging her aboard. The engines roared to life as they broke free from the station, weaving through debris and incoming fire. As the starship entered hyperspace, Lyra slumped against the wall, trembling with relief. The pilot glanced back at her, his expression a mix of annoyance and intrigue. You've got some nerve, lady, he said. Who are you, and what have you gotten me into? Quote. Lyra met his gaze, clutching the artifact's core. My name is Lyra Evenshade, she said. And I think I've just uncovered the most important secret in the galaxy. The pilot smirked, shaking his head. Well, Lyra, I'm Cade Miles. And you better hope your secret's worth the bounty on our heads. Beyond the viewport, the stars stretched into infinity. And for the first time, Lyra felt the weight of her discovery truly sink in. The artifact's melody echoed in her mind. A song that would change everything, if she could survive long enough to uncover its meaning. Cade Miles leaned back in the pilot's chair, his boots propped up on the console. His starship, the Silver Horizon Asterisk, hummed softly as it sped through hyperspace. He glanced over his shoulder at Lyra, who was staring intently at the artifact's core device cradled in her lap. What's the deal with that thing, anyway? Cade asked. It's the reason half a dozen mercenaries are probably hunting us down right now. Lyra didn't look up. It's complicated. Complicated doesn't pay for fuel, Cade replied, crossing his arms. If you want to keep hitching a ride, you're gonna have to explain what's going on. Lyra sighed, finally tearing her gaze from the device. Do you know anything about the Kepler Abyss? Quote. Only that it's a dead zone, Cade said. No one sane goes near it unless they're hiding something. Lyra nodded. There's an artifact buried in the abyss. Ancient, powerful, and unlike anything humanity has ever encountered. It's transmitting a signal, a song, that could hold the key to understanding the origins of countless civilizations. Cade raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a great way to get yourself killed. Who else knows about it? Quote. Too many people, Lyra muttered. And they all want it for the wrong reasons. The Silver Horizon wasn't exactly a luxury vessel. Its narrow corridors and mismatched panels spoke of years of patchwork repairs and hasty upgrades. Cade prided himself on keeping it running. But it wasn't built to house passengers, especially not ones with targets on their backs. Lyra spent most of her time in the cargo hold, analyzing the core device with makeshift tools scavenged from Cade's workshop. The melody encoded within the device grew more intricate with every layer she uncovered, as if the artifact were alive. Cade, meanwhile, kept a wary eye on their surroundings. The hyperspace lanes they traveled were known for ambushes by pirates and opportunists, and the bounty on their heads would only attract more trouble. One evening, as Lyra worked in silence, Cade entered the hold and leaned against the doorway. You know, you could at least pretend to appreciate my hospitality, he said with a smirk. Lyra glanced up, her expression unreadable. Your hospitality. You mean the half-ration meals and barely functioning life support? Quote. Hey, the Silver Horizon asterisk has character, Cade shot back. And you're lucky I decided to help you at all. Most pilots would have handed you over to those mercenaries. Most pilots don't have your reputation, Lyra replied, returning her attention to the device. Cade's smirk faded. My reputation, huh? What exactly have you heard? Quote. That you'll do anything for the right price, Lyra said bluntly. And that you have a habit of leaving your allies behind when things go south. Cade bristled but didn't deny it. Believe what you want, but I'm not the bad guy here. If anything, I just saved your life. Time will tell, Lyra muttered. The tension between them was interrupted by the ship's proximity alarms. Cade darted to the cockpit, Lyra close behind him. What is it? She asked. Unscheduled company, Cade said grimly, scanning the displays. A sleek, black ship was closing in fast, its weapons systems fully powered. It's a Hunter-class interceptor, Cade muttered. Fast, heavily armed, and probably working for whoever hired those mercenaries. Lyra's stomach tightened. Can we outrun them? Quote. Not unless you've got a spare hyperdrive tucked in that artifact of yours, Cade said, flipping switches and powering up the ship's defenses. Buckle up. This is going to get rough. The interceptor opened fire, its plasma bolts streaking past the Silver Horizon. Cade yanked the controls, sending the ship into a sharp dive. Lyra clung to her seat as the ship rattled violently. What are you doing? She shouted. Flying, Cade retorted. Hold on. Quote. He veered into a dense asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks as the interceptor pursued them. The ship's shields flared with each near miss, but Cade's piloting kept them one step ahead. Any brilliant ideas, artifact girl? Cade called over the chaos. Lyra's mind raced. The artifact's core pulsed faintly in her hands, its melody resonating more urgently. It's reacting to the interference, she realized. Head toward the denser part of the field. Quote. You want me to fly deeper into the asteroids? Cade shouted incredulously. Just trust me, Lyra insisted, grumbling under his breath. Cade followed her instructions, steering the ship into a cluster of tightly packed asteroids. As the interference grew stronger, the artifact emitted a sudden burst of energy. The interceptor's systems faltered, its engines sputtering before it veered off course and collided with an asteroid. Cade let out a triumphant laugh. I don't know what you did, but remind me to keep you around. Quote. Lyra didn't respond. She was staring at the artifact, her thoughts racing. The melody had changed again, its notes carrying a sense of urgency and warning. Once they were safely out of the asteroid field, Cade powered down the ship's weapons and turned to Lyra. All right, you've got my attention, he said. What exactly is that thing? And why does it seem to have a mind of its own? Quote. Lyra hesitated, weighing her options. The less Cade knew, the safer he'd be. But without his help, she wouldn't last long. It's more than just an artifact, she admitted. It's a key. To what? I'm not entirely sure. But someone out there is willing to kill for it. Cade leaned back, his expression unreadable. Well, lucky for you. I like a challenge. But don't think for a second I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart. What do you want? Lyra asked warily. 50% of whatever treasure or tech we find at the end of this, Cade said with a smirk. Deal, Lyra said without hesitation. She didn't care about treasure, she cared about uncovering the artifact's truth. Cade raised an eyebrow. You're either desperate or crazy. Either way, welcome to the team. As the Silver Horizon continued its journey, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that their troubles were only beginning. The artifact's melody echoed faintly in her mind, a song that promised both wonder and danger in equal measure. The Silver Horizon emerged from hyperspace into the dim glow of a rogue star system. Lyra stared at the viewport, taking in the jagged silhouettes of scattered debris and derelict vessels drifting like ghosts. This was Ralos E7, a forgotten outpost on the fringes of known space. "Why here?" she asked, breaking the silence. Cade smirked, his hands steady on the controls. "Because it's the last place anyone would think to look for us. And because I know someone who owes me a favor." The ship coasted toward a massive, hollowed-out asteroid that housed the remnants of a lawless colony. Ralos was a haven for smugglers, outcasts, and fugitives, a place where questions were dangerous, and alliances were fleeting. As they docked, Cade turned to Lyra. "Stay close and don't talk to anyone unless I say so. Ralos isn't exactly friendly to outsiders." "Got it," Lyra said, clutching the artifact's core device tighter. Inside the outpost, the air was thick with smoke and the tang of recycled oxygen. Neon lights flickered above makeshift stalls selling everything from alien tech to black market weapons. Lyra kept her head down, her unease growing with every step. Cade led her to a dimly lit cantina, where a group of rough-looking individuals occupied the far corner. One of them, a tall woman with a cybernetic arm, spotted him and grinned. Well, if it isn't Cade Miles," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Still alive, I see. What brings you to this side of the galaxy?" Quote, "Business, Lysa," Cade replied smoothly. "I need passage through restricted space, and I hear you're the person to ask." Lysa's grin widened. "Passage? That's a tall order, even for you. What's in it for me?" Quote, Cade slid a small data chip across the table. "Coordinates to a cache of premium thruster cores. Yours if you help us." Lysa examined the chip, her expression unreadable. "All right, Miles. I'll get you through. But if you cross me..." "I wouldn't dream of it," Cade interrupted with a disarming smile. Back on the Silver Horizon asterisk, the tension between Lyra and Cade reached a boiling point. "Why didn't you tell me we were coming here?" Lyra demanded. "This place is crawling with criminals." Quote, "And where exactly would you suggest we go?" Cade shot back. "Every major system is crawling with bounty hunters, thanks to that thing you're carrying." Lyra bristled. "I didn't ask for this. You chose to help me, remember?" Quote, "Yeah, and I'm starting to regret it," Cade muttered. "You're not exactly a ray of sunshine." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "If you're so unhappy, why don't you just leave me here?" Quote, Cade's frustration boiled over. "Maybe I should. All you've done since we left Kepler is criticize me. I'm risking my neck for you. And you can't even say thank you." Quote, Lyra opened her mouth to retort, but the words caught in her throat. She hadn't considered how much Cade had sacrificed for her, even if his motives weren't entirely selfless. I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know this hasn't been easy, but I need your help, Cade. I can't do this alone." Cade sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, well, don't go getting all sentimental on me. Let's just get through this alive." The next day, as they prepared to leave Ralos, Cade received a message from Lysa. "Change of plans," she said, her tone clipped. "Meet me in docking bay 9. Alone." Cade frowned. "That's not suspicious at all," he muttered. Despite his misgivings, he left Lyra aboard the ship and made his way to the docking bay. When he arrived, Lysa was waiting, flanked by armed mercenaries. Cade's hand instinctively went to his sidearm. "What's this?" Lysa. I thought we had a deal. We did, Lysa said with a shrug. But someone else made me a better offer. Cade cursed under his breath as the mercenaries raised their weapons. He didn't need to ask who the someone else was. The Riven Council had found them. Back on the Silver Horizon asterisk, Lyra paced nervously. Something about this outpost made her skin crawl, and Cade's absence wasn't helping. Suddenly, the ship's proximity alarms blared. Lyra darted to the cockpit and saw a squad of armed figures approaching the ship. Her heart pounded. Cade was gone, and she was defenseless, except for the artifact. The core device pulsed faintly in her hands, its melody resonating in her mind. As the mercenaries boarded the ship, Lyra activated the device. A surge of energy swept through the ship, causing the mercenaries to collapse unconscious. Lyra stared at the device, her hands trembling. It wasn't just a key, it was a weapon. Before she could process what had happened, Cade stumbled aboard, bruised but alive. "Don't say I never do anything for you," he said, collapsing into the pilot's seat. "What happened?" Lyra asked, her voice shaking. "Lysa sold us out," Cade said grimly. "We need to get out of here. Now." As the Silver Horizon sped away from Rallos, Cade and Lyra sat in tense silence. Finally, Cade spoke. "What did you do back there? Those mercs didn't just drop on their own." Lyra hesitated. "The artifact, it has abilities I don't fully understand. It reacted to the danger." Cade's jaw tightened. "Abilities, huh? What else are you not telling me?" Quote, "I'm telling you everything I know," Lyra said defensively. "This isn't just a relic, Cade. It's alive, and it's trying to communicate with me." Cade rubbed his temples. "Great. So we're carrying a super weapon that might have a mind of its own. What could possibly go wrong?" Quote. Despite his sarcasm, Lyra could see the worry in his eyes. The artifact was more powerful, and more dangerous, than either of them had realized. As they drifted into the void of space, the question lingered between them. Could they trust each other enough to survive what was coming next? The silence aboard the Silver Horizon asterisk was broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. Cade sat at the console, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the armrest. Lyra, seated opposite him, studied the artifact's core device with a mixture of fascination and unease. "I can feel it," she said quietly. "It's reaching out to me." Cade raised an eyebrow. "Reaching out? Like telepathy or something?" Quote, "Not exactly," Lyra replied, her voice distant. "It's more like a song. Layers upon layers of melody. Each one unlocking a different memory or thought." Cade leaned forward. "Memory? Whose memory?" Quote, "I don't know yet," Lyra admitted. "But whatever this thing is, it's ancient. And it's trying to guide us somewhere." Cade leaned back, his expression skeptical. "Let me guess. The Kepler Abyss." Lyra nodded. "I think the signal originates there. If we can reach it, we might find answers. Or a whole lot of trouble," Cade muttered. Later that night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat in the cargo hold, cradling the artifact as its soft glow illuminated the room. The melody in her mind grew clearer, its tones forming words. Her breath caught. The voice was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was unmistakably real. "Who are you?" she whispered. The artifact pulsed in response to her thoughts, its light flickering in time with the voice. "What do you mean?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling. The voice faded, replaced by a mournful melody that resonated deep within her. Lyra sat in stunned silence, the weight of the artifact heavier than ever. Their journey brought them to an abandoned void station on the edge of the Kepler Abyss. The station was a relic of a bygone era. its structure dark and lifeless against the backdrop of distant stars. "This place gives me the creeps," Cade muttered as they docked. "It's the only way forward," Lyra said, steeling herself. As they ventured into the station, the air grew colder, and the faint hum of dormant systems echoed around them. The artifact's glow intensified, guiding them through labyrinthine corridors. "What exactly are we looking for?" Cade asked, his hand resting on his blaster. "Access to the abyss," Lyra replied. "This station was built to study it. There must be a way to activate its systems." They reached a control room, its consoles coated in a fine layer of dust. Lyra placed the artifact on the central panel, and the room sprang to life. Holographic displays flickered on, showing star charts and encrypted data streams. A synthetic voice filled the room. Lyra hesitated. "We seek passage into the Kepler abyss." The voice processed her request. "Confirm," Lyra said firmly. The station trembled as power surged through its systems. A gateway began to open, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness and light beyond. As they prepared to depart, an alarm blared through the station. Cade's eyes darted to the monitors, where a familiar black ship appeared. "Looks like your friends found us," he said grimly. Lyra's stomach dropped. The Riven Council's agents had tracked them down. Cade grabbed her arm. "We've got to move. Now." They raced back to the Silver Horizon, dodging laser fire as the station's hangar erupted into chaos. Once aboard, Cade powered up the ship and aimed it toward the vortex. "Are you sure about this?" he asked as the ship shuddered violently. "We don't have a choice," Lyra said, clutching the artifact tightly. With a final burst of speed, the Silver Horizon plunged into the gateway. The transition was disorienting. The stars outside warped and twisted, replaced by a void that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. "This doesn't look like any hyperspace lane I've ever seen," Cade muttered, his knuckles white on the controls. Lyra stared at the swirling patterns outside, her mind filled with the artifact's song. "It's not hyperspace," she said softly. "It's something older." The ship's sensors struggled to make sense of their surroundings, and the artifact's glow grew brighter. Suddenly, a massive structure loomed into view. A towering construct of alien design, its surface covered in intricate glyphs. "That's it," Lyra whispered. "The source of the signal." Cade guided the ship closer, his unease growing with every passing moment. "This better be worth it," he said under his breath. As they approached the structure, a beam of energy latched onto the ship, pulling it toward a landing platform. Lyra and Cade disembarked cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The artifact's glow illuminated the path ahead, leading them into the heart of the structure. Inside, the air was heavy with an ancient presence. The walls pulsed faintly, as if alive, and the melody in Lyra's mind grew louder. They reached a massive chamber, where a towering figure stood waiting. The entity was humanoid, but clearly not human, its body composed of shimmering light and metal. It said, its voice resonating in their minds. Lyra stepped forward. "Who are you?" Quote. Lyra exchanged a glance with Cade, who nodded reluctantly. "We are," she said. The Guardian extended a hand, and the artifact lifted from Lyra's grasp, hovering between them. The chamber filled with light as the artifact activated, revealing a hidden pathway deeper into the structure. Lyra's heart raced. This was the moment she had been searching for. But she couldn't shake the feeling that their trials were only beginning. The light from the artifact faded, revealing a vast corridor stretching into the depths of the structure. The walls shimmered with alien glyphs, each pulsating softly as if responding to Lyra's presence. The first Guardian remained still, its luminous form casting long shadows. What does that mean? Lyra asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Cade frowned. Well, that's comforting. The Guardian's glowing eyes turned to him. Before Cade could respond, the Guardian stepped aside, and the pathway opened. As they ventured deeper, the air grew heavier, and the glyphs on the walls seemed to whisper. Lyra clutched the artifact tightly, its warmth providing a strange sense of comfort. The corridor ended in a circular chamber, its center dominated by a glowing pool of liquid light. What is this place? Cade asked, his voice low. Lyra stepped closer to the pool, its surface rippling as if sensing her approach. It's a memory archive, she said, the realization striking her suddenly. The abyss has been collecting fragments of history, of lives. As she spoke, the pool began to shift, projecting images into the air. A towering civilization appeared. Its people adorned in intricate armor and wielding technology that defied comprehension. They built vast cities, crafted stars, and unlocked secrets of the universe. But then the images darkened. The civilization fell into chaos, torn apart by greed, betrayal, and the very power they had sought to control. This is what the abyss protects, Lyra whispered. The knowledge of a lost age. Cade's eyes narrowed. Or a warning of what happens when you dig too deep. As they watched, the pool's glow intensified, and the room shifted around them. Suddenly, Lyra found herself standing in a lush forest. The scent of earth and flowers filling the air. Cade, she called, but her voice echoed with no response. Ahead, she saw a figure. Her mother, alive and smiling. Lyra, my star, her mother said, her voice warm and familiar. Tears filled Lyra's eyes as she ran toward her. But as she reached out, her mother's form dissolved into ash, carried away by an invisible wind. No, Lyra cried, falling to her knees. The forest darkened, and the melody of the artifact grew mournful. You must let go, the voice of the abyss whispered. Meanwhile, Cade found himself in a different illusion, a battlefield under a blood-red sky. He stood among the bodies of fallen comrades, their faces frozen in expressions of betrayal. Coward, one of them hissed, their lifeless eyes staring at him. Cade stumbled back, his heart pounding. I didn't abandon you, he said hoarsely. I didn't have a choice. The battlefield faded, replaced by darkness. The abyss whispered. The illusions shattered, and Cade and Lyra found themselves back in the chamber. Lyra's breathing was ragged, her face streaked with tears. Cade looked equally shaken, his usual bravado replaced by a haunted expression. This place is messing with our heads, he said, his voice unsteady. We need to get out of here. Lyra wiped her eyes, her resolve hardening. No. This is part of the journey. The abyss is testing us, and we can't back down now. Cade hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But if it tries to pull that stunt again, I'm shooting it. The artifact pulsed in agreement, its glow leading them to another doorway. Beyond it lay a massive hall, its walls lined with towering statues of the ancient civilization. At the far end, a pedestal held a crystalline device radiating a blinding light. That's it, Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. The heart of the abyss. As they approached, the artifact in Lyra's hands began to hum, its melody harmonizing with the device. A voice filled the chamber. Lyra stepped forward. I swear. Cade hesitated, then sighed. Guess I'm in this far. I swear too. The light from the device enveloped them, its warmth erasing the lingering shadows of their fears. The moment of peace was short-lived. The chamber trembled violently as a dark energy seeped through the walls. They found us, Cade said, drawing his blaster. A group of figures emerged from the shadows. Riven council agents led by a tall, masked figure. The air around them crackled with menace. "Thank you for leading us here," the leader said, their voice cold and mocking. "We'll take the heart now." "Over my dead body," Cade shot back, firing his weapon. The battle erupted in chaos. Cade fought fiercely, his movements precise despite the odds. Lyra clung to the artifact, its energy shielding them from the agent's attacks. The masked leader advanced on Lyra, their hand outstretched. "You don't understand what you're holding," they said. "It's not salvation. It's destruction." Lyra's grip tightened. "Then why do you want it so badly?" Quote. The leader's mask cracked, revealing a face both alien and eerily familiar. "Because it's the only way to undo the past," they said, their voice tinged with desperation. The artifact's glow intensified, filling the chamber with blinding light. Lyra felt its power surge through her, the melody in her mind reaching a crescendo. "You must choose," the voice of the abyss said. "Preserve the heart's knowledge, or destroy it to prevent its misuse." Cade's voice broke through the din. "Lyra, whatever you're thinking, do it fast." Quote. Lyra hesitated, her mind racing. If she preserved the heart, its knowledge could reshape the universe. But it could also fall into the wrong hands. If she destroyed it, the ancient civilization's legacy would be lost forever. "I choose." The chamber erupted in light, the decision echoing through the abyss. The light from Lyra's choice engulfed the chamber, erasing all sound and form. Cade felt himself falling, weightless, as the world around them dissolved. When the brilliance subsided, they stood in an unfamiliar landscape. A boundless expanse of glowing fractals, shifting like waves on an endless ocean. The crystalline device floated above them, its light dimmed but steady. Lyra turned to Cade, her voice trembling. "Are we still alive?" Quote. Cade glanced around, his hand still gripping his blaster. "I don't know, but I'm guessing this isn't the station anymore." The voice of the abyss echoed, gentle yet omnipresent. Lyra exhaled, relief and uncertainty washing over her. "So it's safe now." Quote. A distant rumble shook the fractal landscape, and cracks of dark energy splintered through the glowing expanse. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, panic rising in her voice. The abyss replied, its tone grave. Cade cursed under his breath. "Let me guess. More of those council agents?" Quote. The abyss said cryptically. The cracks widened, and through them, shadowy figures began to emerge. Their forms were indistinct, shifting and flickering like broken holograms. But their presence radiated malice. Lyra's grip on the artifact tightened. "What do we do?" Quote. The abyss answered. Cade stepped forward, his jaw set. "What happens if we don't?" Quote. "Great," Cade muttered. "No pressure." Lyra placed the artifact between them, its glow intensifying as it resonated with the heart's energy. Cade hesitated, then reached out, his hand brushing hers. "Ready?" he asked, forcing a grin despite the tension. Lyra nodded. "Let's do this." As their hands touched the artifact, a surge of energy coursed through them. Memories flooded their minds. Of the ancient civilization, their rise and fall, and the moments that had led Lyra and Cade to this point. The bond between them deepened, their thoughts and emotions merging in a way neither had experienced before. The rift roared, the shadows clawing their way through. But the combined energy of the heart and the artifact pushed back, sealing the cracks one by one. As the last crack began to close, the masked leader from the station appeared, their form distorted by the rift's chaotic energy. "You think you can stop this?" They snarled, their voice warped. "The abyss isn't your ally. It's a prison for knowledge that was meant to be free." Quote. Lyra glared at them, her voice steady despite the strain. You're wrong. The abyss protects what we're not ready for. The leader raised a hand, dark energy swirling around them. If I can't have the heart, no one will. Before they could strike, Cade fired his blaster, the shot disrupting their focus. Not today, he said, a smirk tugging at his lips. The heart's energy surged, and the rift sealed completely, trapping the leader on the other side. The fractal landscape began to dissolve, replaced by the familiar surroundings of the silver horizon. Lyra and Cade collapsed onto the floor of the ship, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. Is it over? Cade asked, his voice hoarse. The artifact pulsed faintly in Lyra's hands, its melody now soft and soothing. For now, she said. The ship's console blinked to life, and the voice of the abyss spoke once more. As the voice faded, Cade sat up, groaning. Next time, remind me to stick to smuggling cargo, not saving the universe. Lyra managed a small smile. Admit it, you'd be bored. Cade chuckled, despite himself. Yeah, maybe. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their experiences settling in. What now? Cade asked. Lyra looked out at the stars, the artifact glowing softly in her lap. We keep moving forward. There's still so much we don't understand. But whatever's out there. She turned to Cade, determination in her eyes. We'll face it together. Cade grinned, his usual bravado returning. Together it is. Far away. In the depths of the rift. The shadowy figure of the masked leader lingered, their form flickering with dark energy. The abyss thinks it has one, they muttered, their voice filled with venom. But this is only the beginning. They turned, their gaze fixed on the distant glow of a new rift forming in the void. The story ends here. But countless others await in the vast expanse of imagination. Subscribe to Storylight for more journeys into the unknown. See you on the next adventure.